and you might be lying down or walking around, that's fine. If you can turn your camera on, it would be still nice to know who's here and what's going on. So that would be lovely if you're open to it.
Sure.
Thank you. So in the chat, there's a link to a handout which I would like you to download. It's for you. You can take it home, and we're going to talk about what it is. So before we begin the session, what I wanted to ask you was, well, what would happen to a really good idea if there wasn't a system or a structure to hold it? What happens if you have a really good idea but no real system? And maybe you can unmute or raise your hand or type in the chat. I don't know how you guys normally do it. Ravi, you had unmuted. Please go ahead if you have something you could share.
If an idea is not presented in a well form, it might not invite, investors. It might not invite the
Right.
customers.
Sure, yeah, like presenting an idea would be very helpful in terms of your investors, your stakeholders. But more than that, I think my question is different. If you have a really good idea and you know exactly what you want to do, but you don't really have a system, what happens to that idea? Abhishek.
Ma'am, I would like to answer it.
Okay,
Uh,
Abhishek, you were speaking, but we couldn't hear you. So we'll go to Sumit first and then you. So, okay.
yeah, ma'am, if you have a good idea but not a structure, in execution there are various problems that cannot be mitigated. So
Right.
the main problem is of execution.
The problem becomes of execution. So I heard two things now: presentation, execution. What else? Abhishek, do you have a way to speak now? We can't hear you. Please type in the chat because we can't hear you. How about any one more person whose microphone is working? Um, this is a universal Zoom thing. The idea won't be conveyed properly. Okay, fair enough. This is reasonable. Now, I want to invite you to think about a metaphor. Like, think about this for a moment. I don't know how many of you are aware of the Delhi floods. How many of you are from Delhi? But we had a whole series of floods in Delhi recently, and of course in northern states as well. But we had all of this water flowing into the city when we know that surrounding areas like Gurgaon and Noida, etc., are having a water crisis. And when the floods happened, we had a lot of water. The resources were available. But because there's no system or no structure, there's no way to harvest that water. So I would like to think of good ideas as a sort of as water without an earth structure to support it. And that's kind of what we're going to talk about today, that good ideas without systems and structures are like water without a channel. Sometimes, ultimately, they're not very useful, and sometimes they can also be destructive. So this is the metaphor I want you to hold in your mind as we start working on the business model canvas, because the business model canvas by itself, yes, it's a beautiful structure, but we also want to give it meaning and we want to see why is it useful for us. So that's one of the thoughts I want you to keep in mind. So just as an overview, today's session, what we're going to do is I will talk a little bit. I will present what I understand about the business model canvas. Maybe I'll give you a couple of examples of how we've used it and what impact it had for us. And then hopefully we have some space for question and answers. So that's the plan. And if you have a question during the presentation, you can put it into the chat so that then, maybe we can also, hopefully we can capture it before the end of the session. So what on earth is the business model canvas? Sounds very fancy. It was very scary when I heard it the first time. I thought it was very fancy and very corporate, but it's actually pretty understandable, quite straightforward. First of all, we want to understand that it's an overview, a bird's eye view of the business. It's something that you rise up and then you look over the actual running of the thing, but it's not a detailed business plan. So it's not for us to take this model to create something huge out of it. But what happens is we build blocks, we turn it into building blocks. It was created. It was created in the early 2000s by Alexander Osterwalder and Yves Pignot. You can find their work online. And they have very detailed things that they do around it. think of the business model canvas as building blocks for strategy, for planning, and also in terms of communicating your ideas to your investors. The business model canvas is quite useful because again you have sort of the building blocks, so you can use it to build a pitch deck out of it and proposals out of it. It creates sort of like an anchor point in the middle, in the center of your organization or your idea, that allows you to express what you're trying to do. And finally, I like to think of it as an alive document, like it's living. And what that means is, it doesn't mean that it's a monster and it will eat you, like the monster book of monsters from Harry Potter, but that it can grow, it can change, and it can evolve. So it's a tool that is useful for planning, and it's a tool that is very useful for diagnostics and evaluation. So that's just what it is and what it looks like in its original format. This is not exactly what we're going to do. We will do this, but we'll do a little bit more. But in its original format, it looks like this. It has 9 segments. It starts sort of in the center with the value proposition. You will see customer relations, customer segments, channels on one side, key activities, key resources, key partners on the other, revenue stream at the bottom here, and cost structure at the bottom here. And this is the original model as proposed by Alexander Osterwalder and Yves Pignot. But now, as you're in the entrepreneurial cell, I can share this with you that very often when you start out doing something, the shape that it takes becomes different. And you have a lot of really good models and thoughts and stuff that people will teach you and they'll share it with you. But it's not always going to fit exactly well. So we have found it very useful to take the original model and see what we can do with it. So this is a very useful model. It's fantastic. And we added 4 sections. And you'll see, so in the handout that I've sent you, I've also marked this out in yellow. So everything that's blue and gray and darker blue is the original thing, and the yellow stuff is mine. It's what we've added. And that's basically adding elements of what is driving me, meaning above the value proposition, what is my core value? Why am I the person doing this? What is in it for me? And this is a very crucial question because entrepreneurs and entrepreneurship is a lonely journey. It takes a lot of internal clarity to stay on your path. So having this clarity really helps. And then right at the bottom, there are 3 sections. One is the one in the center, which is community reinvestment and giving back. And then there's this thing about socioeconomic cost and socioeconomic benefits. So this is now, instead of 9, now it's 13 things. And it might sound a bit overwhelming, but to make it simple, this is how I like to look at it. It's actually 4 sections. So and these 4 sections correspond with different segments. So we're going to do each section today so that you understand it, and then hopefully we have Q&A time. So the main section is the core, the one in the center, which is the section of why do we do what we're doing and what are we doing in the first place. And so this is a very significant thing. This is possibly the one thing that stays very, very stable when everything else can change. So your core needs to be clear as possible. You might come back to it and revise it, but it's a really, really significant thing to kind of keep in mind. On either side of the central thing, which is the core, you have the communication wing, which is how do you relate with the people who you're doing this for, doing this with, who are buying from you. So that's about customer relationships, customer segments, and channels of communication. So your marketing, your connection, your all of that stuff. And then there's the business of what we actually do. So on the left side, there is the operations wing, which is what are our key activities, our key resources, and our key partnerships. So this is pretty straightforward. We are doing something. We want to know why we're doing it. We want to know who we're doing it for, and we want to know how. So that's really clear. And then there's something underneath that, which is the business of balance and purpose, which I like to think of as the roots. Now you're in an IIM, so you would not likely have this problem, but I'm a social entrepreneur. So for me, this was a very big problem about balancing revenue and costs, because in the field of social change, we're often giving more than we're receiving. I think the reverse can also happen. You might be receiving more than you're actually contributing. So, how do we find balance, and what does meaning and purpose have to do with it at all? That's what's at the bottom. So, that's four areas, and that covers all of these 13 little boxes that you're seeing. So, I'm hoping that you're sort of with me. Would you be open to give me like a thumbs up or something like a.
Perfect. Perfect.
Okay, I hear someone shouting something, but like a thumbs up or a waving or a nodding or something. The people whose cameras are open, if you can just sort of let me know, that would be good. Okay, okay. Cool. I see some things. All right, thank you. Awesome. So moving on, because this is a short session. So we're going to start at the core. So the core is, why do we do this and what are we doing? So what is driving me is kind of the overarching question. So if I'm an entrepreneur and I want to work in anything, maybe I want to sell jewelry. Then why do I want to sell jewelry? Why is jewelry the thing that drives me? What's the core personal motivation? It's very important to get this clear because other things change. And then from that place, we look at the value proposition, meaning the proposition to the market. What is the value that we are delivering to our customers or our stakeholders? Stakeholders, because sometimes we also, I'm sorry, I have a cat and he wants to say hello to all of you, so he's joined the session. Anyway, so what is the value that we're delivering to our customers or stakeholders? And stakeholders is a word I include because it's really, sometimes you have investors who are stakeholders, sometimes you have, if you are venturing even a little bit towards social entrepreneurship, you will have people you are doing this actively for, so they become stakeholders. But broadly in a business, you have customers. um, what is the key problem? These are the two key questions. What is the key problem that my business is trying to solve? And what are the key needs that we're trying to address? So this is very, it's straightforward. It's fairly simple in terms of the question. I've seen very complex descriptions of this particular section of the value proposition, but it comes down to these two things. What's the problem? What are the needs? And getting this clear is important. You will see that here we are not yet talking about what our solution is. We're talking about the problem. And this is because sometimes our very good ideas, this is the wonderful thing I want to give to the market. I have understood this. I have such a fantastic, it's perfect. But we don't know if the market actually wants it. So we approach it from a problem-centered, problem-solving perspective. So that's the core. Then we come to the communication wing. So just to go back, it's this section. It's the left section, the one in green. This is about how do you connect with your customers. So the value proposition is inherently tied with the customer segment, because when we talk about what are the customer's needs that we're trying to address, automatically we start talking about the customer. So who am I creating value for? And this can be a demographic kind of thing. You make a list of what are the key demographics I'm looking at. It could be a diversified market also. So you might have more than one list of key demographics depending on what you're doing. And so in that situation, you also ask, who are my most important customers or stakeholders? And why we ask that is because, why I really like that question, because not everybody is a paying customer. Not every product has the same kind of impact in the market. So depending on where is the money coming from, who are the people I really need to hold on to for my business to have meaning and for it to be sustainable, that comes into the customer segment. Then the question is, how do we relate with them? Now, as Raji mentioned to you, I am a CNBC certified trainer. So I do something called nonviolent communication. So when I came to this question, I thought the question was, what sort of, emotional relationship do we want to have with the customer? So I thought empathy, connection, warmth, trust, and that's great. But that's not what this is about. This is about what is the logistics of the relationship. So that means, is it an automated system? Are you directly conversing with the person? Do they have, some businesses have concierges and whatever, and so you find a little niche in there, or you find different relationships. You can have more than one answer to each of these questions. And then the question is, how do I make it happen? So when I know what type of customer relationship I need for this product or this business, how do I make that happen? And then channels of communication are direct and indirect. Direct means something you own, your website, your payment gateway, whatever, etc. Indirect is something somebody else owns. And communication can be all kinds of things, from social media to word of mouth to various things. And you can think about what that might be. And which of these works best for us? Because one of the things that happens when we start marketing our products is that we are often thinking, let's do all of it. And then we put a lot of energy into putting, the word out in every possible way. And that's good. But then you do a little bit of research and figure out which one is actually working and getting us customers. So that's the communication. Then we have the operations wing, which is about what are we doing and what or who do we need in order to keep doing it. So going back to the model, this is this blue section here. So it's about our work. So there are three areas in this. One, of course, is your key activities. There's the macro activities, matlab our goods and services, and then our internal activities, meaning what do we need to be doing internally for us to produce or provide these goods or services. You have your key resources, meaning what do you actually own? So intellectual assets, physical assets, human resources. Human resources also includes your expertise, your skills, your knowledge, financial assets. And then you have key partners. And so partners are not just necessarily people you actively collaborate with in nice, warm, cuddly ways, but like they can also just be service providers and vendors who you set up relationships with. Alliances, people who are allied with you, who are possibly in the same market but not really doing the same work. Those were your allies. And competitors who you can collaborate with are people who are in the same market with the same kind of work, but you have a way to tie up with them. So it's just to map out these three things. And then finally, we come to the business of roots, which is the bottom section of our business model canvas here: balance, meaning, and purpose. Meaning balancing between ideas and outcomes, costs and revenue, and connecting with meaning and purpose. And now, I thought very hard about whether I wanted to include the meaning and purpose section in this presentation for you. But I have to say that one of my key learnings about entrepreneurship is it is lonely, it's challenging, many things change. It's not an easy gig, and not everyone is cut out to do it. One of the ways that we find stability in a lot of chaos and a lot of changes and uncertainty, financial uncertainty, where is my salary going to come from? How am I going to feed my cats? What's going to happen, etc., etc. Uske beech mein, why do you keep going? You keep going because it aligns with your values, what is driving me, and you keep going because it gives you meaning and purpose. And so community reinvestment and giving back is one possible way of it giving you meaning and purpose. That doesn't necessarily mean social work. It can mean a different way of giving back. It can mean a different way of reinvesting, but something like that. And then alongside that, socioeconomic costs and benefits is essential because I want to give you an example of an organization that was very warmly wanting to do menstrual health care work. And so they produced and provided and acquired and shared and gave away a large number of sanitary pads. But sanitary pads have a plastic something in them. So when it is used in relief work, it's basically an ecological disaster waiting to happen. So it might be a social benefit, there might be a sort of a cost and revenue benefit in a way, but the socioeconomic cost and benefit is then out of balance. It's not the same. So we want to keep track of that. Also want to include social, economic, and environmental costs. I didn't write that word, but keeping that in mind also, because we do live in the age of climate change. So those are the roots. And this is essential because if you remember when we started with a quote about, this idea that good ideas and systems are like water without a channel, ultimately not useful and sometimes destructive. So you want good ideas to have systems and structures. But another thing to keep in mind is that good systems and structures without values, intention, and meaning is like a body without a heart. Well, it's surviving, but it's not thriving and it's not fully alive. So we want that wholeness, that aliveness, that joy. Otherwise, why would we bother with the social entrepreneurship or any entrepreneurship for that matter? So that's broadly it. This is the canvas. These are the sections. I'm done speaking. Now I want to hear questions. Okay. So I see some questions in the chat, but Rajiv, could you tell me, how do you normally do questions? Do people just ask, or should we do chat, or how does it work?
We can ask them like if they have any questions on it. So this can be a Q&A session. So if anyone have any doubts, please, this is the time.
Ma'am, I wanted to ask one question, that if we want to use market research in business model canvas, can it be
Yes.
used? I mean, can we
Oh,
include
absolutely.
market research?
Absolutely, because when you're defining your customer segment and your value proposition, you will do market research. And sometimes you might find that your key activities radically change after the market research. So absolutely, I mean, you would use all these other tools to sort of bolster.
So it can be included in the BMC.
I mean, in the model itself, actually, here's a possible thing you can consider doing is just a moment. When you come to your channels, right, your channels of communication, channels is how you connect your value proposition with your customer. So you do market research can be part of it. One of the other things that I think some entrepreneurs do is to um, co-create the product with their customers. So you can also include that, and then that. So you, of course, absolutely, you can use different things at different places.
Thank you, ma'am.
Tripti?
For some of the things, like if I'm not sure about the salaries and like what will be the distribution channel, like I'm not sure currently if I'm starting a new business. So what to include in those areas, like in those areas? Yes.
So let me put it this way. I think waiting for the perfect or the correct answer is not, it's not like, don't do it, because then you never move. So you do your best guess and you try it out with all your research, with all the input. And then maybe you find that in 6 months' time, you want to change something. So you do what you imagine is the best thing to do. You're looking specifically also at cost structure and stuff, yes? So when you're starting out, one thing you can consider, if this can expand, it would be very nice, is like you have fixed and variable costs, right? So fixed costs will not change. But starting out, variable costs can change. So you might, so for example, PayU is a fantastic payment gateway that requires us to pay 18% GST on every transaction. Instamoto is a less fantastic, awesome looking gateway that does not require us to pay 18% on every transaction for whatever internal reasons. So we save on our costs by choosing the less expensive thing. Yeah.
Won't it be a problem? Like if in starting I'm showing this to my investor and after that I'm changing like some of the models or some of the things I'm changing in this. So won't it be a problem to investors?
I think for well, it depends on the investor, but my understanding is that if you include a period of review, assessment, evaluation in your original proposal, that would probably land as helpful. That okay, you're trying this out, you've done your research, you've presented your idea, and you're putting a timeline on it. So it's not that this is from now until the end of time; it's from now until 2025, and then we do a review. So you're in that case, your most important customer or stakeholder is actually your investor.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I hope that helps. Um, okay, I'm seeing a question in the chat, which is Abhishek Gupta. When should we use the business model canvas and what's the goal? You can use the business model canvas at the very beginning of an idea, a few months in, when you have a little bit more clarity about what it is you're doing, you have a product, you've understood what you're trying to do, you know your motivations, and then you go through it. You can also use it several years into your work to see how it's going. So it's for diagnostics and planning. So you can use it at the beginning or in the middle. Does that answer your question, Abhishek? Well, I hope it answers your question. All right. Any other questions?
Ma'am, I would like to ask one. Ma'am, I would like to know about your own experience. Like
Yeah.
you said that you have been in social entrepreneurship. I have been also in. I have started or tried a agribusiness with my father, and many times it happens that business is not doing well, and we have to give the salaries and wages from our own pockets.
Yes.
And like you said, it's a very lonely thing to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
So how you deal with that situation? So I would like.
Thank you. That's a really good question. I want to say Encompassion. My organization is called Encompassion, and um, it started as a sort of a dream, a wish, or for a world where, whenever we talk to each other, we speak with empathy, and everybody feels safe and welcomed. And so that was our dream, and that is still our dream. Um, so one of the things that supports me when something challenging happens, oh my god, I don't know where next month's salary is going to come from, how we're going to pay for our rent space, etc., is to go back to the dream, and to go back to why is that so important to me. Because when I know what I'm trying to put out into the world, then I find this inner anchor, and that inner anchor helps with, I mean, not all businesses will succeed, we know this, but that doesn't mean that the dream has to not succeed. So I can hold the dream, and if it comes down to it, maybe the business isn't working, and then I change the business or I let go of it. So we've actually had major radical huge changes. Like, we went from being a training organization to being a straight up relief organization for a year, then realized relief nahi matlab kitna karenge, and now we mixed relief and training. Now we're back to being training. So it's because the needs of the times changed, and we changed with it, and the available resources changed. So that's does that give you a sort of a sense of direction?
Yes, ma'am.
I find I just want to add this. I mean, my work is based on something called NVC, nonviolent communication, which is driven at the idea is that everything we do is an expression of our core needs. So that really helps me, because when I can quantify my need is belonging, my need is community. I have a longing for safety for everyone. These the essences of my dream. Then it's a lot clearer. My values and my vision will be stable, and everything else can change. And then there's a little bit of one other thing, Sumit, that I can add is that I think most entrepreneurs have थोड़े पागल होते हैं, हल्का सा. It's important. They have to be a little bit insane. Otherwise, it doesn't work. So there's also that. So part of you saying, that sounds like almost an interesting idea. Maybe it's going to work, but I'm excited about it. You jump in, that willingness and that courage to jump, even when you're afraid. So you do that inner work and then inner capacity building. Okay, I see Vishal's question, how to approach BMC, like which, oh, I love this question. Yes, I would start with the core. So I will share my screen because I came prepared. That sometimes happens. Just a moment. Yeah. My experience is that when you start with the core, then you build the communication wing, and then your operation wing, and then you go back to the roots. That doesn't mean that you don't have any clear idea about your activity before you start. So you obviously would have some sort of direction, some sort of activity. That's okay. Keep that in mind. But when you're building the canvas, start in the middle, and more specifically, start here. What is driving me? What's the value proposition? Do some research on this. There is also a value proposition canvas, which is very, very interesting, and it really helps, which basically connects your activities with the customer's needs, and so it helps you map that out. So do these two things first. Then you go into the customer relationship, customer segment. Then you go back here to the partnerships activities. And then you can pause and check if the customer segment and the value proposition match. If the value proposition and key activities match, pause and check that. And then you do the routes. And that's it. That's how I would do it in an ideal world. And sometimes maybe you already have one thing very clearly mapped out. You know your key resources. In that case, you start again from the beginning and fill in the rest. Start at the core communication operation rules. If that helps. Are there concerns about sustainability of our customer relationships? Sai, can you say a little bit about what you mean? Hopefully by unmuting or typing. Or does somebody else have an idea about what that question means to you? Because maybe it's a shared question. I don't know.
I guess he's asking about the customers that are mentioned who are primary customers. What is the customer base? Can it be, I mean, properly demarcated? It can change from time to time, but I guess we have already said that it's a dynamic, it's a live concept. So we can, I guess.
Well, I mean, there's about 2 or 3 ways of answering that question, which is why I wanted to ask what he meant. So what you said, Ravi, is correct. Like your primary, if your most important customer can change. For example, Tripti, maybe initially your investors are the most important. And then, 2 years down the line, your investors are done because your market is working. People are, whatever, they're buying from you, you're known. So now who is buying from you becomes more important. So that changes. But the other way to approach this question is also sustainability of sustaining that relationship. So, for example, if you set up at the very beginning a very intimate customer relationship where, every time somebody comes to you, you will meet them, you will talk to them, you will get a sense of their needs, it'll be like a thing. That may not be sustainable in the long run, depending on the business. I mean, if you're running a coaching or a therapy business, that's probably essential, but if not, it won't work. So maybe another way to look at it is also that how much energy you are investing into the relationship and what you're getting out of it, which is also, by the way, a good way to look at all relationships in life. How much are you putting in and how much are you getting back?
And how often should it be updated? I mean,
Once, I think there was a period for us where we updated it once every month for 5 months. And the last time we did it was now in January, and it has been very, very stable since then. I mean, one thing that I want to make you a horrible drawing. Are you open to a horrible drawing to understand what I mean? It'll be really, really ugly, but let me try. All right. Can you see this whiteboard?
Yes, ma'am, we can see that.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So the horrible drawing. Now it's trying to teach me how to use the whiteboard. So helpful. So the horrible drawing is basically a lesson in entrepreneurship. It's the first and lesson in not the first, but it's like it's the 18th lesson in entrepreneurship I ever came across, and it's the only one that has like in a serious way made sense. And the lesson is this: that if you are, suppose this is your product, yeah, your product is this square, this black square thing, which I can't expand, but it is, yeah, okay. So this is your product, and this is to be deleted. Okay. And you start out with this product. It's a fantastic product. It's a beautiful black square. Why wouldn't somebody want to buy it? And then you do your work, and then suddenly you realize actually this is not working. I mean, no one is buying my beautiful black square. So suddenly you say, okay, what if it's not a square? What if instead it's a black triangle? What if I change that? And then we do a little bit of sales and stuff, and it turns out, okay, the triangle shape is working, but the black is not working. So what if now, instead of a triangle, I mean a black triangle, I actually make it a Let's see how to change the color like this. A beautiful purple triangle. And it's like, okay, yeah, it's almost there, we're getting there. But it's not quite there, and now something more needs to change. So tell you what, I'm going to try a whole other shape in this beautiful purple color, which is the purple circle. And then the purple circle takes off. It looks nothing like the black square. But if you didn't have the black square to begin with, you would not get to the purple circle. And that is entrepreneurship. It changes. And it there's no predictability about when it happens. I mean, there is predictability. It's not like no predictable, some logic, common sense, keeping an eye open. But at the beginning stages, your business is like a child. Not all children will learn to walk and speak at the same time. So you do what you can.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. I hope that you've seen my horrible drawing. I don't know what to do with this now. Can I close the whiteboard? Yeah. Okay. All right. I'd love to hear a bit more. Just we have 7 minutes more. So questions or even comments, any thoughts, any reactions would be lovely to hear.
Ma'am, before
I'm sorry.
this BMC, uh, startups or companies were using any kind of structure to showcase how they're going to plan their business, or how they're going to execute their business, right? Before BMC came into the
I'm sure they were, but I don't think it looked like this. I think the BMC, of course, is built on, okay, you know what? Let me just be honest and do a non professorial thing because I'm not a professor, but I don't have the academic background to answer that question properly. So I'm sure there were other models, but so any model would be built on other things. And this is the one that emerged about 20 years back. There are other models floating around now, and you can mix and match them also. So,
okay.
yeah. My background is actually history. I did ancient Indian history, but we didn't cover the history of organizational models, so I don't know how to answer that question. Okay.
It is well said
Like,
from your side. Yeah, it's well said from your side that a startup is a child which we nurture and we grow. So we would just like to listen your journey with compassion. Like how did that came into picture, and how did you thought of starting it off?
How did I think of starting it out? So, like I said, thank you for that question. I was not prepared for that question, but okay. When I finished my MPhil in ancient Indian history, after a lot of effort and energy, I realized that I'd poured my heart and soul into this thing, which was about my MPhil was on stories, and stories are usually about people. So my interest was in people. I liked human beings. I liked teaching. I've taught for a year, but I did this beautiful MPhil, and 3 people on the entire planet read it, and it was just it crushed me. I mean, it went well. My MPhil was fine, but I didn't. It was not meaningful for me unless it involved other people. Also, with at that point, I was also learning nonviolent communication, and I had come into this understanding of this different way of using language, which instead of focusing on getting things done or fixing what is broken, the way we use language in NVC is to actually connect with each other at the level of feelings and needs. And that changes the conversation completely. And it was very motivating for me. I came to it and so somehow I was done with academia. I was at the edge of choosing what I want to do, and I liked teaching. And I started doing these small groups. And then over a period, I started hosting larger events. And then at a certain point, I don't know, I was just very clear that this is what I want to do. I want to teach NVC. I want this work to go out into the world. I want people to know that instead of living with blame and shame, internal or external, you do have other ways of connecting with each other. So that's how End Compassion came into the picture. And then maybe a pivotal moment was in 2020 because in Delhi we had these riots in Delhi, and at that point actually I was also volunteering at the de-addiction center to work with people who were addicted to drugs and alcohol and stuff. All of them were men. Very, very interesting experience. Not, men from very different backgrounds. It was very intense. But I found that when I was offering my NVC empathy facilitation, they were able to connect with themselves, and it was healing. And then the riots happened, and I realized, okay, I don't know, I think I just felt something in my body saying, go do something about this. So I went out and I started doing relief work. And then at a certain point, it became clear that this relief work it's a band-aid. It's not healing the actual social problems that we have, which is multiple things, all the way from intolerance to just straight up poverty. So we shifted to community development. And while we were doing this, we realized we are learning so much that we also want to share this. So then we integrated it back into our training. Around that point, I became a certified trainer. And about in 2021, I was also, so the Center for Nonviolent Communication has a board. It's an elected board. So I was elected to the board, which meant that I was doing this community development stuff and relief stuff and training stuff. But now there's this additional layer where I can learn. It's very intense, but it's beautiful because there's a lot of learning about organizational systems, structures, governance. So I now take that and I put it into my trainings. So the business model canvas training, which I'm now here offering to you at this point, literally came out of all of this, literally came out of us trying to figure out our own stuff and learning from all of these experiences. And over the years, the organization grew at one point to 11 people, then it shrank to 5 people. So right now we're 5, and we might be hiring more in some time. So we'll look at it. Hope that helps. I don't know how motivating that was, but that's been the journey. But I want to say one thing though. One thing that I think is very important to me is, no matter how difficult it gets, it does get difficult. There was a period where I had 68 rupees in my pocket and 30,000 rupees to give to 2 guys who were doing a lot of the relief work with me at that point. So that was scary. Because at the age of 35, you also don't want to have 68 rupees in your pocket. Like, you should ideally have some savings, but I did not. But I think even then, even on those mornings, I woke up and I was very grateful for what I was doing. I really liked the work. I'm in love with the work itself, and that keeps me going.
Great, ma'am. It was great to hear your story. So I think we are short of time now. So I would like to thank you for this amazing session. Your passion for sharing your expertise is truly inspiring. Your ability to distill complex concepts into actionable insights is a testament to your mastery. You have not only equipped us with the knowledge, but also kindled a drive to apply this newfound wisdom to our future ventures. I want to express my sincere gratitude to each participant for your active engagement and thought-provoking questions. Your participation has added depth and dynamism to our discussion, and your commitment to learning is truly commendable. As we leave this session, let's carry forward the insights we have gained. Let's take this newfound understanding of the business model canvas and apply it to our ventures in igniting innovation and steering our business toward new heights of success. Once again, thank you, Manasi ma'am, for amazing session, and that has undoubtedly left us indelible mark on all of us. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. This is one of my favorite things to do, to connect with people who are just starting out. So please feel free to stay in touch. Can I just say one last thing very quickly, because I think I forgot to do this properly? Is
Yes.
the handout is basically 2 pages. So the first page has all the details we shared, and the second one is somewhat empty. You can also just create your own thing, but you can download this and use it. And I look forward to hearing what all of you do with all of this entrepreneurial drive. And so all the best. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you for the document and everything, for your time. Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
Okay, everyone. This is the end of the session, and we are ending now. Thank you for the participation.